Hey there, everybody. Glad to see you again for Silver Creek Church. Here we are online with our service, and we're in week 2 of our Give, Serve, Love event. And we only have one more week. Next week we wrap it all up, but you still have a chance to get involved. This week we talk about serving. We're going to talk about places, extraordinary places, that we can roll up our sleeves, get involved, and help in some tangible way. And then, of course, last week we talked about giving, how all of us can put in together our funds to do something more than we could ever do alone. By showing a little generosity to some extraordinary organizations, charities, nonprofits, already doing great things in our communities, we can give and help them do a little bit more by working together. So I'm glad you're joining us today. We're going to jump into the message in just a few minutes. We'll talk about places that you can get involved and serve more. But before we do that, I want to look at what we did last year. It's so good to look back and see what's been accomplished, and you made that happen in a big way. Thank you to all of you who participated in last year and helped us do great things all around us. Let's look at that now. So I'm here with Sabrina.
Yes.
And Sabrina, what's your last name?
LaBarge.
LaBarge. See, we always talk, she's our waitress a lot of
I
times.
am, usually almost every Sunday. Yep, every time.
That's pretty cool. Well, as a church, we're trying to reach out in the community and help people that are going through a lot of stressful times right now. We know that the first people that were hit here within the last week or two are waitresses.
Yes, servers, definitely. All restaurants. It's been very tough for a lot of the girls right now.
Yeah,
so especially with Christmas right around the corner. I mean, I completely understand.
Yeah, I mean, you count on the tips as a major part of your wage.
Yep, that's how we pay our bills. That's the only way to do it.
Yeah. And so, can you tell me, how has it personally impacted you?
I mean, it hasn't been too bad. It's been a little bit stressful. I was smart and saved a bunch of money just in case it did happen again. I mean, I'm very grateful that I do have a job, and I get a couple of shifts here and there. There's a few shifts to spread around. So I mean, I'm making ends meet so far. I haven't had any struggles. So hopefully it ends in about a week, I hear, about the 8th.
That's what we're hearing.
So I'm very hopeful. I'm hoping to get some kind of normalcy back up.
Now, are you looking out for any other people, or just yourself?
It's just me and my daughter. She's about to be 10, 2 days after Christmas.
Oh,
nice.
Let's see. 10 years old.
Yeah, she'll be 10, 2 days after Christmas. So yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, so just me and her.
Well, I won't stretch it out any more than we have.
You're fine.
We just want to help you out. So if we could, we want to give you a tip. If this could be a good tip. I'd like to give you 100. As you guys try to navigate this period. Well, good morning and welcome to Give, Serve, Love 2021. Man, we are in the second week, and I am really geeked about what we're going to talk about this week. But first, I want to review a little bit about what we said last week, just to kind of catch you up and remind you. What we're doing is we have several things that we work on with Give, Serve, Love. We want to give with generosity. We want to serve our community. And of course, both those things mean that we're loving the way that Jesus taught us to love. So last week we talked about giving 100%. No, I'm not saying 100% of what we have, but we want 100% of us to give. So 100% of us, that's the goal. The goal is not a certain number. We're not going to put a number up on the wall and say, okay, here's a certain dollar amount. No, it's 100% of us. We're asking for 100% of us. If we do that, then we've hit the goal for this year. We want to give a financial gift and help some amazing, amazing charities that are already doing things really good. We want to give them a little boost. And 100% of everything that you give goes to those charities. And so $39.95 is the number for this year, right? $39.95. It's for each and every person in your family. So if you're like a family of 2, we're asking $39.95 a person, or whatever it might be, family of 10, or whatever you guys have at home, right? The idea is $39.95 a person. We want to give out of what we have to help other people. And some of you, I know that some of you are like, okay, man, $39.95 seems like a small amount. And so we played around last week and said, well, you can always move that decimal. If you need to move that over a little bit and make that a little bit more, you can do that. Because sometimes working together, we can do much more than we could ever do alone. And if some of us can help boost that up a little bit, then that helps the overall goal, of course. So the intent is for all of us to give. We're helping people who are homeless or just in between. We're helping women and children who are victims of abuse, and we're focusing in on helping children and parents within foster care programs and services. Those are kind of the 3 focuses that we've chosen. There's so many possibilities. There's so many things out there that, of course, for needs. But this is what we've chosen to hone in on this year. And there's 3 extraordinary organizations who are hitting the ball out of the park in those areas. First one is the Rescue Mission of Saginaw. If you know very much about history of Rescue Mission, incredible rich history. And the very first one that was started was in Saginaw. Then from there, you've heard of other ones in places like Lansing and different cities. But Saginaw was the very first. And those people continue to this day to operate in integrity and continue to do amazing, great things for people all over Saginaw. As well as we're working with Underground Railroad, who helps specifically women and children who need a fresh start. Sometimes they come out of not good situations where they just need help to get things as simple as a driver's license and maybe a car and maybe somebody to watch the kids so that mom could go for a job interview to try and get their life reestablished, especially after abuses that they experience. And then Foster Closet, in Michigan, that's a new one that we've added for this year. An incredible organization that we've gotten to know right around the corner from us. They're actually in Clio, and they operate for Genesee County, Clio area specifically, and they help people who are fostering kids to be able to get needed supplies, things that they need to be able to do what they do better. And so by partnering with these amazing organizations, we can help them just to continue to do what they do, but maybe a little bit better, and maybe give them a little extra boost for the year. There's 3 different ways that you can give. You can give by check, and if you're giving by check, we have envelopes you can use. But please note in the memo the word give, whether you use an envelope or whether you use a check. Write that word give, then we know that it's going towards this project, not just general donation. And of course, there's PayPal. You can give through PayPal. Now, if you do give through PayPal, there is a place that you'll see on the screen where it says add a note. Make sure you click that, add a note, and put the word give if you're going to do that. But in all transparency, I must inform you that I said we're giving 100%, but if you give through PayPal, if you put in $39.95, that exact number is not going to actually come through to the church because PayPal takes a fee out for their services. It's roughly 3%. So I just want you to be aware of that if you really want to give $39.95, then you might want to add 3% to that number, and that's a way to achieve that, to make sure it comes through that way. It's incredibly helpful to have PayPal, but I want to let you know, a lot of people may not realize that they do that fee. And you might think, well, it's for a church, but PayPal doesn't see it that way. So that's just the way it works. And if you're online and you want to give through check, but you're not here, where you can go to our give station and get an envelope or something like that, you can also, there's going to be an address coming up on the bottom of your screen right now at 7971 Main Street in Birch Run, Michigan. Use that address if you want to mail something in. You can do that. Make sure you note give in the memo of the check. Now, last week we started talking about the financial gift that we could do together. This week, we're going to dive in with week 2 of Give, Serve, Love, and we're focusing on serve this week. And we're right in the middle. So next week is going to be our very last week that we're going to have for the whole program. So you've still got some time to get involved and do something. But I'm so glad we're doing this as a church. Yesterday, we had the opportunity as a church to be at a community event here in Birch Run called Trunk or Treat. The Chamber of Commerce hosted and kind of spearheaded the whole event. Lots of businesses and community people involved all around this racetrack they have here in Birch Run. It was a cool event. But one of the things I love, and what I've heard other people mention too, is that we as a church decided to get involved there and to be a part of what they're doing there, to be a part of the community. But I grew up in church, and I've been in lots of churches throughout my life. In fact, I added it up. At my age, I've been to over 2,000 Sunday morning services. so far in my life. Yeah, that's a lot. And out of all those services, I don't remember another church that I attended with my parents or in most of my adult life myself where a church did what we're doing, where a church chose to do a Halloween event or whatever outside the walls instead of having it at their building. That's not common. And the whole point of Give, Serve, Love is for us to do the same thing, to get outside of the walls and do some things for our community. But it's not typical, it's not usual for churches to do that. And I guess that's one of the things that makes us stand out, makes it a little bit different. Anytime that I've grown up with churches doing something that was outside the walls, it did happen, but it was typically for something like missionaries. There were certain times of the year especially where they'd say, okay, bring in something for missionaries. I remember there were certain Sundays where we were allowed to go into the cupboard and raid the cupboard and get some boxes of Jell-O and some canned goods and take all that stuff into the church, and then all the kids would kind of make a big pile of it, and we knew that that was going to go help missionaries somewhere on the other side of the world. And it felt really good to be a part of something bigger than ourselves, to be a part of something working together to help someone who really needed it in a different part of the world. But that was really what it was. When it came to stuff happening in the town or the city that we lived in, if the idea, the mindset, I think, of the church then was, well, if you want what we have, come here. You're welcome to come in, but that person had to take the first step and actually go to that building. And I think one of the great things about what we're doing here right now is it gives us the chance to go to them where they're at right now, instead of expecting them to come here. Now, you may not know this, but one of the first jobs I ever had in church-related world is as a children's minister. Some of you know that. Some of you know it very well. But I did. I started as a children's minister. And I have to be honest with you, when the first thought of that came, it wasn't my thought, it was someone else who offered the job to me. I laughed out loud. I'm not joking. I laughed out loud because I thought, children's ministry, like, what's that? I mean, to me, it didn't seem like so important. I wanted, a lot of times in the church world, there's hierarchy of different pastors and jobs, and children's ministry is not on the top of that typical mindset that you see in the staffs, behind closed doors. Behind closed doors, when they're in the meetings, it's who's the most important person in the room, who's going to talk, and when they talk, everyone listens, the whole E.F. Hutton, you may remember that. But there's people in the room, and as a children's minister, you felt like your voice wasn't even heard. It's like, excuse me, if you're the youth pastor, oh man, this, usually they're cool, they dress snappy, and they might even have cool hair or whatever, and they're kind of cool for that reason, and the lead pastor, that's the, everyone, sit at different, don't ever sit at the head of the table, that's their spot. And that was kind of the hierarchy. So as a children's ministry, I thought, well, man, that doesn't seem like a very glamorous, glorious job. But as I got started doing it, I found out something different. I found out it's the most important job in the church. I found out that person in children's ministry has typically the most volunteers underneath them working than any other ministry in the church. That particular person is going to make the difference of whether a family visiting with children is going to like the church and come back or not come back. That person, believe it or not, is integral to the success of a church. But oftentimes, throughout many years, it's been thought as a lowly position. It's been thought of as, well, it's not really that important. And oftentimes, churches emphasize more on the adult space, more on the space for teenagers and youth, and a lot less on the children. But I was exposed, by being in this role, I was exposed to a whole new way of seeing things. My eyes were opened, and I realized, oh my goodness. In fact, we found through studies, people started, back in the 90s and the 2000s, people started doing research. A group called Barna did statistics and finding out, interesting questions and answers about church attendance and what are things that are trends happening here in America. And one of the things found out was that the highest percentage of people looking for a new church are parents with kids. That's the highest group. And there's lots of people doing it, but if you want to look at which one's the most, the highest number, it's typically parents with kids, because typically parents, they kind of grow as they're having their kids, and they say, you know what, we need to get involved in church. We need to get our kids in a church. And so they start looking. And so then suddenly I realized, oh my gosh, as a children's minister, your job is so important, because that's the front door of the church that you're helping out with for their growth, for them adding families to the church. Your job's super important. And there's the kids. There's the kids too, right? I mean, kids are important, aren't they? Sure, kids are important. I think. I don't know. I mean, I'm not getting much reaction from you guys. I'm not sure what you'll think. Before I ever started a children's ministry, I was a volunteer. I liked to volunteer in several ministries. I helped with soundboards. But youth ministry, teenage, that's what we used to call it back then, youth ministry. Teenage ministry was the thing that I got the most help with. I still remember one of the first churches where I really got involved in a big way and served. This church was a smaller church in terms of sizes. It was running maybe 40, 50 people, adults. And in this church, there was a youth ministry, but it was only like 5 people, 5 teenagers or so. And they didn't have someone to lead it. And my friend, who was 19 or 20 at the time, and I was 19, they invited him to do it. They're like, hey, you know what? He's got an incredible testimony of how God changed his life. Why don't you be the leader? Like, they didn't give him an official like pastor title or whatever, but here, why don't you be a leader? Let's try it out and see how it works. And so after a few months, that group began to grow. And he invited me to be his co-leader. And so, again, I wasn't given an official title or whatever, just like him, but together we were doing this. Like, we did everything together, building this ministry. And I started a group. It was like a drama troupe. We did sketches and skits that we did, and we started doing it and recruiting teenagers to be a part of this group. And it started being really effective. It was working. Like, we were excited about what we were doing, and this group began to grow. And it got to the place after a couple of years where this student ministry, this youth group, began to grow as big as the adult population of the church. The pastor would often make a joke, because back then what they would do is they would have everyone come together for the music part, and then they would dismiss the students, the youth, to go to their part. And more than half the room would evacuate when they left. And the pastor, he joked a few times saying, should we trade places with them? Should they have, because the adult room was the biggest, the best room in the church. Should we be trading places? And it was a joke he made, but it was there was truth in there, because this group was growing where we had 60 kids coming, teenagers, to find out what was going on here. There was incredible things happening. Out of that group, there was a bunch of teenage guys who decided, let's start a band. They started a Christian rock band, back when that was a new thing. They started a Christian rock band and began to do concerts traveling all over Michigan and places. We started another, middle school students were inspired by what we were doing in the high school with the high school students doing a ministry for skits and drama. They started one where they did interpretive like dances to songs and stuff like that. Not like in a weird way with, whatever, but it was kind of like cool songs, right? Where they were like making a point about addressing issues like teen suicide and alcoholism and drugs and, trying to give a positive message. So all of these things were happening, all these things springing out of it. But you know what I find most remarkable about that church, when I think back, was the pastor, the lead pastor, because he enabled us to do that. He took a chance on these young people and said, I'm going to give you a role. And eventually that guy became youth pastor. He had an official role eventually, because we were doing something, but he enabled us. He met with us. He invested his time with us. He saw something more than what we were at the moment. He saw that maybe this guy, Matt Nichols, maybe he could do something for God someday, so I'm going to invest and spend time with him. And he did that. And to this day, man alive, out of that group, I would say at least 50% are in full-time ministry in some capacity to this day. And we keep in touch in some. Because there was such an impact made at that point of our lives. But it would have never have happened if the lead pastor hadn't taken a chance on a few young people and said, hey, I want to spend some time with you. I'm going to choose to spend time with you. Now, he took flack for it. He took flack for it. There was adults who were like, what are you doing? Why? I'm trying to get an appointment with you, Pastor, and you're saying you're busy, but it's because you're meeting with all these teenagers all the time. He would come in during the evening and have meetings with us and say, okay, let's talk about the book of Romans, and he'd go into studies with us, or just ask us, how are you doing? And let's talk about how to take your next step in your spiritual journey so you could become more mature in Christ. And he was spending a lot of time, and people around him were saying, Pastor, you're spending an awful lot of time with those young people. But they couldn't say too much when those results started happening, because look what's going on. And because I was the leader of the drama group, I began doing more things. I got these ideas of, hey, let's do this. Never been done before, let's do it anyways. I somehow got a reputation for being a little bit adventurous, perhaps even a little childish, and people would even, these adults would pull me aside sometimes at the age of 19 and say things like, you need to grow up, young man. You know, I know you've got these great ideas and you're going to do all these things, but have you thought about, there's local codes to be careful. I mean, to their defense, we decided to build our own light board one day, and I did it using Romex wire for house wiring and electrical outlet plugs, and it looked like a spaghetti mess on this floor, and I'm sure any fire inspector would have walked into the room and shut it down in a second. But some of their defense, I think they had some truth to what they were saying. But to us, it was just like, well, we read a book on it, we can do it, let's do it. Let's do it, let's go for it. Sure, it could result in fire, but look at what else good could happen. You know, so we just went for it. We did crazy things that were taking chances, but we were so excited about wanting to reach people for God that we were just letting our excitement take over. And so I was told that I need to act my age, that I needed to grow up. I was told that stuff. And I get it. As a parent now, I understand that as parents, we want our children to grow up in the Lord and to grow up in maturity and to be responsible, amazing citizens. That's what we want. We want them to be responsible, amazing people. And so there's things like, when I was a child, I thought of the child. When I became a man or a woman, I put away those childish things. We think of verses like that we've heard, and we think, yeah, that's it. That's what we're trying to do. Even movies have used that verse. It's so well known. So we, as parents, as adults, we look at young people sometimes and we might shake our head and we might roll our eyes, but we're thinking, hey, this is why. We want them to become more. We want them to become better than what we even had a chance to do when we were young people. But the thing I want to ask us today is, what if we're wrong? Or just a little bit, like in the best of our intentions, what if we're trying a little too much? What if we're trying to get too grown up? What if we're trying to get too reserved and maybe a little too protected in how we conduct our own lives as well as those with our kids? What if? Is there a possibility? And so Jesus, like this conversation, was approached with the idea of, kids and, what do we do with them? And Jesus had some things to say about it. Let's look and see what he said. Matthew chapter 18 we're going to look at in verse number 1. And here's what it says. About this time the disciples came to Jesus and asked him a question. Who would be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Now this is something that happened a lot. Jesus had to put up with people like us who are like, I want to do the important stuff. What is it I can do that's really important, Lord? And Jesus called a child over and had the child stand near him. So imagine this. The disciples are talking to Jesus. It's an important conversation, and I can only imagine, especially in those times, men got to stand the closest to where he was talking, and then if you were there, you were women and children, you were towards the back. That's how that society looked at things. It was like this level of importance, like men first, and then it goes down from there. And so for Jesus to answer the question by saying, hold on a second, and he kind of looks at the kid in the back of it. Yeah, I'm talking to you. No, you. I'm talking to you. The kid's probably like, what do I do? Jesus, the teacher, the rabbi, the most important person in the room, Jesus asks that child, come here. And I'm sure the parents were probably like, okay, they're probably like, oh my gosh, you picked my kid. No, I don't know, but that kid comes up and Jesus has that kid standing next to him. And then you're wondering, right? Everyone in the room is thinking, what's he going to do? Did he see what the kid did earlier? Is the kid going to get in trouble now? Are the parents going to get called out? Like, okay, hey, there's some problems here we're going to talk about. They're all wondering, what's Jesus going to say? And here's what Jesus said next. I promise you this. And when he starts off with, I promise you this, this is like pay attention, folks. If you don't change and become like a child, you will never get into the kingdom of heaven. But if you are as humble as this child. So now everybody's, the nervous parents are probably like, oh, okay, all right, so it's good. I mean, talk about a child is good. But still, all the people who are wanting their level and place of importance are sitting there going, wait a minute, a child, wait, you're saying that I've got to, go backwards in, what are you trying to say? Like, I'm an adult now, I'm grown. And what Jesus is pointing out is that the word humble is key here. Because typically, now this isn't this way with all children, but typically, most children they're usually quiet, reserved. You know, they're usually inquisitive, but usually trusting to a new person or a new situation. Unless prompted by an adult otherwise, or unless prompted because of a negative circumstance that otherwise happened, they assume the best in a person or a situation they walk into. That innocence, that idea of, okay, hey, what's the worst that can happen in this dark building, in this dark room? You know, as parents, you're like, oh, what are you doing? But as kids, it's just the idea of, hey, let's go play. It's all good. And Jesus placing a child next to him is making everybody nervous. Because at that point in history, remember, the women, the kids are in the back of the room, not in the front of the room. They're in the back of the room. They have a place. And Jesus goes on to say, you are the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And when you welcome one of these children because of me, you welcome me. It's kind of like that mafia mindset of, you know, this guy right here, you do something to him, you do it to me, so you better watch out, you know what I'm saying? So I mean, it's like he's telling him. It's like, you know, so everybody's probably thinking, oh man, I better be careful. What, you know, there's this child. And I tell you, sometimes I love walking through places like the mall. Because I love walking through the mall or places like that, and there's, you know, parents, we're busy, we got mission, we're on doing things, and they're pushing a stroller or something. And if you try this sometime, if you'll stop and take a minute and look and make eye contact with that child, with that baby and that thing, they'll do the same to you. And I love it in those moments when no one else seems to even know what's going on, but you and that person are having eye contact and there's a smile going on, or maybe they're messing around and kind of doing a little bit of a, you know, peekaboo with you or something. You've had those moments where you're like, there's a connection. You're in a restaurant, you're eating, and you look over and there's that baby that's at the front of the table, but they're like, you know, somehow they've got that ability to turn right around, and they're looking at you, and you're like, all right, but to that baby, it's like smiling, and because to the baby, to the child, they're looking at you, and they're not seeing potential threat. They're not seeing what did they do last summer. They're not seeing what is this person up, what's their motives. That child is just looking at a human being who's like them, and saying, hi, let's connect. Let's connect in a really cool way. So I love that. And Jesus is pointing that out to us. He's reminding us that we're all part of one family called the human race that his Father created. So in Matthew 19, something happens again with kids. Let's see what happens again. This is later on. Verse number 13. Some people brought their children to Jesus so that he could place his hands on them and pray for them. His disciples told the people to stop bothering him. So you got to understand, you know, even back then, people were like, would you bless my child? You know, they even did it with their goats and their donkeys and their cattle, whatever else. Would you bless? Because to them, they wanted the best possible outcome for anything. And as a child, that was part of it too. Like, will you bless my child? And so Jesus, being the rabbi, the teacher, they bring him. And the disciples' first thought is, okay, you know, yes, Jesus did something with that kid the other day in that meeting, but come on, man, he's got important stuff to do. So the disciples, after hearing him say what he said earlier, are jumping in between, running defense, saying, whoa, 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 you know, just, you know, come on, bring the ones who are lame or sick, bring those up here. And here's how Jesus responded, verse 14. But Jesus said, let the children come to me, and don't try to stop them. So as the disciples, it had to be one of those, you know, you're like, sorry, Lord. You know, like the puppy on the nose. It was a moment like that. He's like, oh, hey, let them come to me. Don't try to stop them. People who are like these children, he's reminding them again. People who are like these children belong to God's kingdom. And after Jesus had placed his hands on the children, he left. So he placed his hands on the children, prayed for them, and said, this is important, guys. Now, I want to jump ahead to Matthew chapter 25, where Jesus is going to be explaining the future. And now this part's really hard to hear because nobody wants to hear about the horrible, negative stuff that's going to happen to Jesus, which is necessary. It's necessary for him to accomplish his purpose, why he's here on earth. But Jesus is going to talk about it. So let's jump into that, verse 31. When the Son of Man, he's talking about himself. That's who Jesus, he often referred to himself as the Son of Man. When the Son of Man comes in his glory with all of his angels, he will sit on his royal throne. The people of all nations will be brought before him, and he will separate them as shepherds separate their sheep from their goats. So now everybody's going, okay, wait. What's this about separate people? they're probably really starting to pay attention now because Jesus just got their attention with something. They're like, what are you talking about? So he goes on, verse 33. He will place the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And referring to sheep were more valuable than goats. And so that was kind of that, it was an illustration. He's giving an illustration right now. Then the king will say to those on his right, my Father has blessed you. Come and receive the kingdom that was prepared for you before the world was even created. Okay, wow, these people are hearing this is sounding pretty good. But now what he does next throws them for a loop in verse 35. When I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. And when I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me. When I was naked, you gave me clothes to wear. When I was sick, you took care of me. And when I was in jail, you visited me. And people had to be getting confused right now because they're all thinking, the disciples are like, we've been with you the whole time. I don't remember this ever happening. Maybe even wondering, what is he talking about? So he's getting people's attention again because this is kind of like, doesn't make sense, doesn't add up. This isn't what rabbis do. Rabbis don't have this happen. He continues in verse 37. Then the ones who please the Lord will ask, when did we give you something to eat or drink? So he's answered the question before it's even asked, because they're all wondering, when did we give you something to eat or drink? When did we welcome you as a stranger, or give you clothes to wear, or visit you while you were sick or in jail? Jesus continues. He's answered a question for him before they even ask it. The king will answer, and I imagine at this point the room got real quiet, because everybody's wondering, where is this guy going with this? What's he going to say? He's got everyone's attention right there with him. Whenever you did it for any of my people, no matter how unimportant they seemed, you did it for me. So again, Jesus is coming back to this illustration that people are as, if not more important than he is. Everyone in that time was used to saying, who's the most important person in the room? You'll sit here, you'll sit there. There was always hierarchy, always. Jesus is saying it's a level playing field. Jesus is saying everybody's important. Everyone matters to God. And so it's ruffling some feathers. It's causing some people to wonder, what is this guy talking about? But it comes together. It has to come together for them. That he's making it so big to see that no matter how small of a thing you did or unnoticed it may have been, it's important. And he isn't finished yet with what he's saying. Because remember, he's talking about judgment time. And so, in one of the rare times where Jesus is typically giving messages that inspire people to, come on, you can do this. Come on, you can take the next step. This is one of those moments where he kind of takes the role of, okay, here's what's going to happen if you don't take what I'm saying seriously. There are consequences. Here's what's going to happen next. And it had to send chills down the spines of everybody in the room when he said what he said next. Here's what he says, verse 41. Then the king will say to those on his left, get away from me. You are under God's curse. Go into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. So suddenly this is not a positive, fun, faith-filled message of, woohoo, it's all going to be good, everybody just do what you're supposed to. There's grace for whatever is done, just don't worry about it. I mean, grace is a huge part of what Jesus came to do. But I think he's trying to let us know that please don't take that as just I'm saved and then I can just do whatever I want to with my life and it doesn't matter. I've signed up, so I'm good, whatever. Jesus is somehow pointing out in the parable that there's some importance to what we do. That it matters how we spend our time, how we treat people. So, here's what he says next. I was hungry, but you didn't give me anything to eat. I was thirsty, but you did not give me anything to drink. I was a stranger, but you did not welcome me. And I was naked, but you did not give me any clothes to wear. I was sick and in jail, but you did not take care of me. Man, at this point, you could hear a pin drop. Because now he just brought full circle what he's trying to say. From the children brought to the front of the room, to the illustration of people who they typically would look down upon if you were in jail or if you didn't have something if you were super poor. They were to look down, and suddenly he's saying, equal playing field, everyone's important. But he's not done. Verse 44, then the people will ask, Lord, when did we fail to help you? When were you hungry or thirsty as a stranger or naked or sick or in jail? Jesus knew that, okay, remember, he's continuing to tell this. He knew, he's already thinking ahead to what they're going to ask. This isn't someone else asking this question. Jesus is saying, I know what you're going to say next. You're going to say, okay, after all that's been said, but when did I not do that? Come on, you talk about me, I'm a good person. When did we fail to help you? When you were hungry or sick? And so he's like, okay, if you haven't figured it out yet, let me make it clear one more time. Verse 45, the king will say to them, whenever you fail to help any of my people, can I say it any clearer? No matter how important they seemed, you fail to do it for me. This is one of those rare times where Jesus fully explains a parable he's telling while he's telling it. Most of the time he would tell a story like this and use analogies, and people would be like, okay, I think I get that. This is one of those times where Jesus is like, okay, I'm going to fully explain it so there's no confusion. I don't want anybody coming to me later and saying, well, I didn't get it, Jesus. No, this is it. Whenever you fail to help any of my people, and again, who are my people? Everybody. Everyone's my people. No matter how important they seemed, you failed to do it for me. Sobering words. It wasn't just a gentle prompt like, okay, guys, come on, you can do it. Come on, keep trying. Come on, guys, love one another. Come on, gentle prompt. It wasn't that. This is a warning. This is a flat-out warning, as if what we do matters. And it can be summed up in 3 words. Give, serve, and love. We can take those 3 words and sum up exactly what Jesus has been saying throughout the entire New Testament. His message came down to these 3 words. His instructions for us. And this week we're talking about this idea of serve. We know we can give. We've been given so much. I don't care who you are, what bracket you're in for income. If you live in the United States of America, you are among the wealthiest people in the world. We are so fortunate. We are so lucky for what we have. We're so lucky that people from all over the world are trying to enter into America through borders right now. Everyone else knows it, except us. We're like some of the last ones to figure out that we're really fortunate. We really have a lot of blessings here. The people who we consider, oh man, they're having a hard time, are doing great if they were anywhere else in the world, if you look at standard compared to standard of living. So we have the ability to give, and so we talk about that we're all going to jump in. We're going to give financially to help people. We can do that. Serve is the next topic, though. Serve. What can we do with our hands, our feet, our time? Because what we do with our time, Jesus just got done saying, is kind of important. That we can't look at him someday and say, but Jesus, where did I miss you? I thought I went to church every Sunday. I gave when it was time to give with the give, serve, love thing. Remember that? I gave $39.95. I even added 3%. Come on, Jesus. And Jesus is going, yeah, but what about when did you visit me when I was in jail? When did you clothe me? When did you serve me at the local soup kitchen? You could have done that. They're like, well, yeah, I guess I could have. But, I had things to do, people to see, places to go. I was busy. I'm an American. I'm busy. I got a lot of busy stuff going on. Jesus is like, American? Anyway, we could digress, right? He's like, what's that? But the point is this. We're all part of this human race that God created. And our brothers and sisters are as important as anybody to God. So important, in fact, that it matters what we do to help them. And we can't just turn a blind eye. I mean, it's easy to look and go, oh yeah, I didn't know. That's a phenomenal excuse. I didn't know. I was unaware. So it's nice, it's convenient to close our eyes or to just not pay attention or just not watch that, that commercial comes on, change it quick. I don't want to see any more of those poor children that are needing help. Gosh. Or, maybe I could just, not go to that place because I know what they're going to talk about that week because they're talking about the give, love, serve thing, Maybe we just won't go, It's easy to turn a blind eye and not pay attention and not listen. But I think Jesus was pretty clear in what he just told us. And this is our chance to serve outside the walls of our church. Serving in church is amazing because we serve each other, and that's important. So whether you're serving as a part of the church or outside the church, it's all very important, and it's making a difference, and it's awesome. It's incredible. It's looking like Jesus. It's being the light of the world. But once a year, we focus in on this idea of what else can we do outside these walls. It's a reminder. This is our rally cry time to say, okay, guys, don't forget, we're going all year long, do a lot of great things here in this building, but don't forget, there's a lot more out to do outside too. So what can we do? Let's put our heads together. Let's think about this. Let's brainstorm. Let's look for ways that we can be a big help. And so this is our chance. And the people have hesitance to commit. I know. Listen to the way he just explained that entire portion. He knew people were hesitant to commit. He knew people were like, oh, but gosh, I don't know. If I commit, then I really have to follow through and do it. Jesus knew that. But he still said, this is something we've got to do, guys. If we're going to be truly a Jesus follower. Now, if you don't want to be a Jesus follower, then you're off the hook. You can live your life however you want. But if you want to be a Jesus follower, if you want to take the words that Jesus said, and you want him to say one day, well done, and say your name next. Well done. You did it. And people cheered and saying, yeah, you did it. If you want that, then there's a little bit more we got to do. We got to pay attention to the needs around us. And the reason I brought up kids, the reason Jesus brought up kids is because kids are usually faster to respond to an obvious need that we just completely miss. Usually kids are the first ones to point out and say, well, what about, are they okay? And as adults, because we've had a past, as adults, because we're busy, as adults, because we got so much to do, we can become so focused and so, just narrow-minded in our approach that we can dismiss the kids, what they notice, or just tell them, no, don't worry about that, we're just going to do this. We're more jaded. Kids are not jaded by the past like we as adults become. Kids haven't isolated themselves to a simple life, to a life where it's very few people so that it makes it a little bit easier. Kids are generally open to new adventures. They're ready to try something new. They're willingly walk towards the unknown, not cautious at all, not very careful. But we adults can get too cautious and too careful to the point that we just don't see it. The point that we actually miss it. Because if we miss it, we won't feel guilty about missing it. Something unexpected happens to you when you volunteer, when you get involved. Something unexpected happens on the inside, and it's an incredible thing. And this is one of those benefits of serving, one of those God built in things. God built into us a feeling of positivity towards things we should be doing. And it's built in by him so that when we start to do things like him, when we become like him, something wells up inside of us and we feel like, oh, I feel alive. I love this feeling. I love the feeling I have when I watch that video because I gave, and watching that waitress's face when she was handed $400, she was not crying tears of, oh, I wish these people never came. She was crying tears of, I am so thankful. She's crying tears of, I can't believe someone would do this for me. You don't even know me, and you're going to give all this money to me? I love the feeling of watching that, knowing I was a part of that. That feeling right there is that God put in breath, that when we begin to breathe it, we become better. If we're struggling with physical ailments or with things that we just are upset about, that's a cure. Now it may not be a cure all, but it's a cure. It's a breath of God-given breath into us. It helps us. It helps us to be happier with our life. It helps us to find peace when we can't find peace. It helps us to find joy when we feel like I just don't know what to be happy about. It does something to us when we serve other people. And so Jesus isn't just telling us to do it because we should. Jesus is trying to tell us this is one of those secrets of life to happiness. This is one of those secrets to success and happiness, is in giving away from yourself and serving other people. So, I am asking us over the next, we've got like a week and a half left, I'm asking us to get involved and serve somewhere. And if you're like, well, I don't know if I can fit it in this next week because of this, it's okay, do it a week after that, do it a month after that. And hopefully our goal is that we'll try serving and love it so much that we then continue to do it throughout the rest of the year once in a while. But if we can just spare 15 minutes, I'm saying, guys, how about this? 15 minutes to do something somewhere. And if you need ideas, I've got 3 ideas for you. These are 3 amazing places This is the volunteer coordinator for this place, that place, and then her name, Patricia Squires, is the phone number. This will be back up here later. You can take a snapshot of it with your phone if you want to, or you can come back and ask us, hey, can I get that phone number? These are places that you can reach out to serve and get involved. And if you've got kids, let the kids do it with you. It's incredible to do it together as a family. And if you just like, hey, I'm just gonna carve out 15 minutes out of a week and I'm gonna go do this, you won't regret it. I guarantee you, this is one of those things you won't regret. And Jesus is telling you that you're not gonna regret it. Because remember, Jesus said, when I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me. And when I was naked, you gave me clothes to wear. When I was sick, you took care of me. When I was in jail, you visited me. So Jesus is telling us very clearly, when you do it for them, you're doing it for me. If you've ever been on a missions trip, where you've traveled out of a country on a missions trip, you'll find yourself saying, this is 99% of the time, so it may not be 100%, 99% of the time, people will find themselves saying, this was such an incredible experience, and then what says next? Everyone needs to go here. Everyone needs to experience what I just experienced. But what it is that you experienced, the magic that you experienced can be experienced right here, right now as well. And that's from serving something that gave no benefit to you. You did something that didn't benefit yourself in any way. 100% was selfless. You went somewhere and served, and in that process of serving, you were filled with something that you loved. You were filled with something that made you feel ways you haven't felt in a long time or maybe never before. Positive, where you're just like, oh my gosh, everyone needs to. And that's what Jesus is trying to say. Everyone needs to. Everyone needs to experience serving. Because once you serve, your life will never be the same. It'll only become better. Because by serving others, we become more like Jesus. And we're serving him when we do it. So 15 minutes. Let's do it, guys. If we can't do it in the next week or two, we'll do it in a month or whatever it might be. But let's get it done. Let's serve outside the walls. It's great what we do here, but let's do it some more other places. Can I pray for us? Heavenly Father, we come before you and we are thankful for this opportunity to serve. Lord, thank you for your words. Jesus, thank you for your words to remind us, as difficult as they can be to swallow sometimes, but to remind us that it is important. It does matter how we treat other people. It does matter what we do with our time. And it's very important that we don't just become isolated, self-centered individuals who just want to make sure I'm okay and everyone else doesn't matter as much. Help us, Father, to remember that it's in helping others, it's in serving others, that we find life, that we find happiness, that we find joy, that we become like you. So again, Jesus, thank you for these words today, but give us the courage to do something with them. Give us the courage to step out and to take that step, to make that commitment, and to volunteer. We thank you for this. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so next we are going to have another song together, so if you want to stand up with me, we'll have a closing song.
Take courage, my heart, stay steadfast, my soul is in the waiting, is in the waiting. Hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. It's never failing, it's never failing. No. You'll surely keep your promise to me that I will rise in your victory. All I know is, take courage, my heart, stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting, he's in the waiting. Hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing, he's never failing. Take courage, my heart, stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting, he's in the waiting. Yes, you are. Hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing, he's never failing. We believe that's true today. We are so glad you were here with us. We love you guys, and we'll see you next week. You're dismissed.
Heading out on our own with our hope in the clouds. And we're starting to see that we're onto something. Feel it coming, we'll keep running. Nothing in our way, and we got no reason to wait. Let the journey take you where it wants to. We'll continue to find our way through anything we face. We got what it takes. Here we go. All we need is an open road and a chance to see a never-ending world that's beautiful. Here we go, with the sunlight on our skin. It's a brand new day, it's ours to take, and we will let it in. This is where the adventure begins. Every step, writing stories that seek to be read, taking hold of the moment as we discover every color filled with wonder. Now we finally see we got everything we need. Here we go. All we need is an open road and a chance to see a never-ending world that's beautiful. Here we go, with the sunlight on our skin. It's a brand new day, it's ours to take, and we will let it in. This is where the adventure begins. Heading out on our own with our hope in the clouds. We're starting to see that we're onto something. Feel it coming now. Here we go. All we need is an open road and a chance to see a never-ending world that's beautiful. Here we go, with the sunlight on our skin. It's a brand new day, it's ours to take, and we will let it in. This is where the adventure begins.